great to see you again, Sly. And it's been
Likewise.
really good to have this link up through Nicole and to be with everyone today.
Likewise, Ghislaine, really excited.
So I'm in London and you're in LA.
Yes.
And we're here crossing time and space into this amazing platform, and we're going to talk about digital intimacy. Yes, so both of us having worked in this area for a while. So I can tell you a bit about my background, and we have got a few slides to show people, haven't we, as well? So maybe we can share slides and we can actually talk a little bit, first of all, about our work, and then go on to some other topics that we think are really important to approach.
That sounds great. I think everyone should be able to see the slides now.
Great. Well, I'm coming from a collective, a wonderful collective called Body Data Space, and we are what we say. We work with the body and data in virtual and physical space. I've been involved actually in working with telepresence for 30 years. I started experimenting in the late 80s because I'm coming from a dance background. So my involvement in technology is entirely through body technologies, entirely to do with how we deal with our bodies and our living bodies in relationship to tech. And here is a diagram that we use to help ourselves look at the body today, the hypersensory self, we call it, where we're transmitting all the time data from us through our devices, whether they're our laptops in our hands or on our wearables, transmitting data out all the time, and it comes back to us in different ways. And what I'm really interested in at this point in time over the last 10 years or so is the beginning of the merge of the physical self and the data self, and how we get to this kind of virtual physical blending. And that vertical physical blending, actually, for me, has been looking at how are we moving as humans towards different aspects of being through this digital revolution. And of course, we've had a lot of crossover now in telepresence this year, which we'll come back to. But here we've been exploring the human as we become cyborg, as we actually enter a realm where we're mixing our bodies with technologies in different ways, robotics and implants, etc., but also the human as it moves towards avatar and how we represent ourselves out there, ourselves and others, how we explore a digital intimacy and start to enable something to move between us, and the multi-identity that comes into avatars too, how we work as avatars in our workplaces, in our social lives, with our families. And I think that this slide is actually where your work actually comes into play. Is very, very topical example of working with the avatar of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, Ghislaine. I think, I love our discussions in discussing previously leading up to this, the blending of the virtual and the physical. And at Emerge, what we've been working on for the last few years has been really driven by our mission as a company to create multiple products that enable meaningful bonds across distance and time. Now, the way we wanted to approach this first and foremost was incorporating the sense of touch, because it's just so powerful in terms of the ability to convey and receive emotions. And so at a very high level, what we've built is this product. It's kind of similar to a speaker. We've built upon all the abundance of research and prior art that's been in the space around ultrasonic beamforming, built our own technology and IP, optimize it for social interactions, for the ability to communicate with other people across distances, and specifically integrated for immersive technology. So you can kind of see here how it might feel like if you had our device in front of you. We can create the slightest sensation of touch, use midair, so non-wearable form factor, but we can create pretty distinct shapes. Now, the end goal is not to replicate reality, as you can see here, but create new moments, create new languages of touch. In the end, like, what we're really passionate about is not, feeling glass or leather or a rock, but how do you convey emotion across distance? And as you can see here, we're really optimized for the shared experience. How can you connect with someone that you're not physically with at the moment? And how can you convey and understand each other in a new, meaningful way with new depth and emotion? So that previous video was obviously an animated animation of how it works or what it would feel like. This is actually what we have today. So we have manufactured a device that creates this sense of touch midair. At the bottom here, you can see we call it the M1 device, using ultrasonic energy, completely safe to humans. It's able to create this virtual object, in this case, a virtual dog, that you see through some type of visual display. We're agnostic, so you can see this through a 2D screen, a 3D display, or a VR AR headset. In this case, the user is using the Facebook Oculus Quest that displays the visual. And then we pair that visual with the tactile sensation, so that whenever the object moves or you move an object, the touch sensation moves with you as well. And so this is what we've been working for the last few years, and we're really excited about now potentially accelerating our go-to-market given everything that's happening in the world. Once again, our goal is not to replicate reality. We're not trying to replace the in-person experience of being with a loved one, but really enhance it when you're not with someone. And we're truly standing on the shoulders of giants. This is not a new concept. We're very cognizant of that. This has been attempted for many years, many decades, and this is a great visual because it shows what we achieved in 2019, and then walking backwards all the way to Ghislaine's work from 1999. Ghislaine, you want to mention anything here?
Yeah, no, this is it's interesting, very interesting seeing these two next to each other. And yes, that's a workshop performance that we did in '99. Actually, after about 10 years of doing these remote stage connectivities, this one is London, Bangalore, and here particularly is a virtual touch, looking towards virtual touch. Yeah, so very much entirely telepresence, and what we were working with here was navigating and orientating ourselves actually within the virtual spaces, extending energy beyond our fingertips. So really interesting seeing this next to your special M1. So looking at fingertips particularly, and what can we extend into this special space? Because 87% of our communication, Sly, is through our gestures, through our facial expressions, through our tone of voice. It only actually leaves 13% to what we say. So it really proves how important it is to understand that these are performative forms, that if we're going to reach some kind of intimacy, if we're going to get more tele-intuitive, and touch is such an important part of this for the future in that third space that we're looking at between ourselves and hanging out into the virtual and then back to the other.
Mm-hmm. And in in prepping for this talk today, Ghislaine and I were discussing about our title of the talk, which is digital intimacy. So we actually wanted to go away from the slides for quite a bit of it. Now I just removed that and really just see how close we can really get in terms of the discussion without having all the visuals. So yeah, Ghislaine, I think one thing we discussed previously, and I'd love for you to share with the crowd as well, is how do you think digital intimacy has changed with COVID, and how has that change been different than the last 30 years? Because you've been working on this since the 80s and 90s.
No, it's been an incredibly strange year for me. It's been a bit like some kind of horrendous universal research group has come into being, and I'm well aware that it's we know it's very, very difficult time for all human beings, for all living things, and I'm lucky in London. I'm in my loving bubble. We call them bubbles here, where we're in groups, in families, and we can go in and out of very few bubbles. Very lucky to be in a loving bubble. I know many are in unloving bubbles. Many are alone. So actually, I think that the use of telepresence has been incredibly important, but learning to actually start to be more intimate in this, to start to be more connected to each other is important, to allow ourselves to push out there. It will never be the same as real presence, yeah. But we need to do this better because we are needing to understand being telepresent as well as being present. And equally the same with virtual touch, Sly. It will never be the same as touch, but right. Actually here we are looking at a remote distance and we need to cross time and space. And there are advantages, of course, financial advantages, there's mobility, environment, there are advantages. And I think for me, I see an ongoing virtual physical hybridity that's going to happen, that conferences are not necessarily going to let go of this part of this because the access for us all is much wider.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And something I loved in hearing from you is leading up to this is there's been a few shifts in the world that really changed how people approached their willingness to use, digital products to overcome distance and time.
Yeah.
COVID-19 has been a situational, cause, but you were mentioning some products that actually changed and shifted. You kind of saw the mass view of
yes.
shift.
It's been there's three key products that for me were in my work time on this were actually quite a huge relief when they came out, because they opened up to much more mass understanding actually about distant communication and representation of ourselves other than in our physical forms. And the first of those, of course, was Skype. And Skype just actually was amazing, because before that, only businesses and university people and a few others had the luxury of video conferencing suites, etc. Started in 2003, and it's used by 40 million people daily this year, actually. So, and then there was the Wii in 2006, which was the first time I think many people got to make an avatar of themselves or even of others and represent that. And then there was also the Connect, the motion capture Connect, which shifted everything into the household, into the domestic environment.
Yeah, that's I remember the Wii, and I remember just having a lot of fun with it, and didn't think about it from that lens. But I think you're right. It got people more comfortable with the.
It's when these things start to merge across into the mass scenario, and I mean, I think for you at the moment, with your incredible, different scenario of being able to the touch thing coming in, it's quite an uncanny valley. People still think, oh, this is quite strange and complex. But I've learned actually across time that the uncanny valley moves all the time, and actually it will become much less uncanny within the next 2 or 3 years. And the uncanny valley is different in different countries, in different times and places. So as we shift through into understanding that we can work with our technologies more closely, and they can work for us and enable us in this world to do more.
Yes, I love that last thing you said about technology working for us. We really strongly believe in that from a product standpoint, because we think that technology has an amazing potential, but we don't want to be encumbered by it. In many ways, that's why the form factor of our initial device, actually I want it right here in front of me, it doesn't require a wearable, right? You just immediately have this in your space, and you're actually able to interact with it in real time. You don't have to put anything on.
I think that's really important, actually. We've got definitely also with body data space, we've avoided wearables, and we've avoided being tethered, which we used to be tethered, completely tied to the floor. In motion capture suits, you could only move about 2 foot, so but actually we've avoided those, and I think that is the right way for you to go with this, because you need to be your natural self. You need to be able to move and flow and be within space in a natural way, not with a load of wearables on you or some kind of bodysuit that means you can feel each other at a distance.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, like you mentioned, which I very much agree with, it's not about replacing the in-person experience, because it is such a rich experience. So any technology that would encumber us in understanding our humanity, or being able to express our humanity, that kind of takes away from the end goal in and of itself.
Yes. And you are right mentioning the pioneer side of this. There has been work being done with telematics, as it was called. Yeah,
that's a cool phrase.
That phrase was made in 1978. It's about the convergence of computers and telecommunications, and that was the point that everything started. And I think particularly certain people like Roy Ascott, who did this amazing book, actually put together Telematic Embrace, which is essays of his from way back, talking about this convergence and how it could be used and what we could get in terms of how we could enable people to find each other in this through different methodologies. And also some very early experiments like the hole in the wall, which was just a satellite link up that was put between, I think, LA and New York, and in a pop-up shop window 20, 30 years ago. And people were just amazed and just looking down through it, surrounding these windows and actually looking at each other and waving and making gestures at a different distance. So yes, we're seeing this now move into the mass scenario and an understanding of it. Many people needing to use it for work, but also for social. When one parent's working away, how do you actually enable a family to continue being intimate, you know? So
yeah, that last point around families is pretty on point to when we set out to create Emerge, something that we were very passionate about, because my co-founders and I were immigrants / first generation Americans that just understand the pain of being apart from our loved ones. And so it's not a pain universally felt equally across all people in the world. Some people are very fortunate to live extremely close or have the means to visit their loved ones frequently before the pandemic. And I was just thinking, when you were discussing different products that shifted the landscape, we aspire to be one of those products as well that can shift how people understand connection at a distance. Right now, we think that people we're just hearing, because of the pandemic, the loneliness of people being stuck at homes, the lack of tools to be able to communicate and connect with their loved ones. People are having to, attend birthday parties over Zoom. People are having to see their loved ones go through huge life milestones, and not being able to hug one another is a big loss. And even that book you mentioned by Roy Oscat, the telematic embrace, like touch is one thing that we really believed and realized is touch is so core to how we even understand our own language and how we express our emotion. The embrace part of, telematic embrace shows that intimacy, right? Without touch, you can only go so far, we think, in terms of being intimate. And so I think we're really fortunate, I think, in a strange way, by the fact that we have been working on this problem for a long time. The timing now to release a product that solves a pain point of disconnection from a distance, we think is quite relevant. And, we're listening to the market, we're listening to users, and we're listening to people that comment on our social media and on our website. And we're now trying to figure out how we can accelerate something to the market to really solve this need. And I would say previously, before the pandemic, this need was really seen as a nice to have by a lot of, venture capitalists. They like to say a painkiller versus a vitamin. And I think at this point, we do solve a very critical need for a much larger population set than we did before. People understand the pain of being apart from their loved one and how important touch is. I mean, you're seeing images of people hugging through plastic, which is just so sad to see, but also, shows you how important that sense of touch is and how we're missing that in communication.
No, you're really right, because what we've done with across this year is a very fast mass movement of understanding, again, into a much wider population of how important it is to enable this kind of more remote intimacy. And I think people have been incredibly creative, actually, in finding ways through telepresence, through teleconferencing, etc., all the different platforms that are being used, as you say, for birthday parties and things, but also this whole area of many people have been having to do funerals online and deal with the loss as well of someone, and try to celebrate lives through these streams, and have found incredibly positive ways to do that. And we're all learning from each other, actually, at all times on this. It's far better, I think, to start it's really gives me hope to start to move towards products like yours, where there is actually this potential to connect together and to find ways to at least feel something, and emotions and joy and touch, than these really quite upsetting pictures of people wrapped in full plastic over them, trying to hug a parent that's in a care home because they both cannot touch each other, but they're desperate for that hug. Yes. And I'm sure it's exactly the same in the States as in Britain. The care home scenario is very difficult, particularly for dementia patients who just don't understand what is going on and why their family can no longer be with them and visit them.
Right. Yes, it is really sad. We hope to do some good, but we are also very cognizant by the fact that there's a lot that has to be designed properly to not to avoid doing harm as well. And a lot of your work centers around data privacy and people's rights to own their own information. I think that could be an interesting point to touch on, as we wrap up here. And at this point, I'll probably share one visual that you've put together.
Yeah. No, we've been aware, all of us, very aware for many years that actually, of course, our data, when we give it away, we usually get something in return, like we get free use of one of the big platforms or one of the big social media networks, etc. But actually, as we move into this period, what we seem to be much less aware of is the invisible harvesting of our biometrics, our biosignals, the data that actually, from our voices to our faces, through face recognition, iris recognition, obviously fingerprints, but also particularly motion capture surveillance, our gait as well, and how that's used. And so we've been talking for a long time about, this is a very basic visual of our kind of idea of a simple way that there could be a data rights dashboard where we actually, each of us individually owns our own data, and we can control the settings ourselves and opt in and out of the data that we give away and where we give it to. So I don't know, what do you think of this kind of idea?
I love this framework because we're still in the early days of this, but we were pretty aware early on that we were going to be generating new types of data. For the last 100 years, we've really been gathering data on our voice and visuals, but now we're bringing in this third element of touch, and that is an incredibly intimate data set that we have to be aware of. To where, how can we let people control how we use their data, and how we empower them to choose how they want it to be used. If they want to monetize it, if they want to sell it, that should be their own right. And how could we give them the tools to opt in for, I love the top half here, shared for social good, because it very much aligns with our bigger mission at Emerge is creating universal empathy. How can you understand what everyone else in the world is going through, and how can we contribute to the betterment of our species because of things? I mean, even what we're doing now and what we're experiencing now with the pandemic. So I think this is an awesome framework, and I think all products in this space, products that are being talked about.
Everybody needs to have, within every company, there needs to be a mission statement from from everyone in the company involved in actually how to deal with these data ethics onwards, to make sure that we retain our identity, retain our selfhood, and we have some say in what's happening in the world. This is our body data, and it is us. It's us as individuals.